Okay, so let me start. The name is Growing Roots in Japanese Neighborhood, and yes, minding that today's presentation will be the last, I took the liberty to make it a little bit flamboyant, if you want. So it will have a lot of pictures and drawings, maybe some of them very clumsy. So please, well, accept it, and let's have fun. So the contents of today's presentation will be as following. It will take 4 or 5 parts. First, introduction, then I talk short about method, and the main part, autoethnography, will be number 3, which is market green and called Live and Grow in NAB. So NAB will stand for Neighborhood Association Building. In a second, I will talk about this. Then will be part moving on and some conclusion. So, first from question to the listeners. Yes, where do I live in Japan? Is it house, apartment, ranchi or mansion, or any other common housing in Japan which you know? And I have to say no, none of those. I live in Jichikai-kan, which is Neighborhood Association Building, and throughout the presentation I will use its abbreviation NAB. Please remember what NAB is standing for, Neighborhood Association Building, Jichikai-kan. And this is how it looks, and my residence with my partner is linked in green color. And this is us reported in a local newspaper. So this is the background project. So let me give you an idea how I will be speaking today about research question based on literature review. So there are some societal problems in Japan, and I was wondering, can they be solved together with migrants, while also migrants are getting some kind of help to their adaptation to local community? And looking at these questions, we see that yes, it can respond to aging, labor shortage, and some kind of other community-associated problems in Japan. And yes, by my presentation, I will try to show how migrants probably can fill the gap in the social fabric. We know that integration of migrants is a two-way process, and both sides have to actively interact. So on the left side is migrant in the shape of Cheburashka. And yet this understanding is rarely translated into practice. And some research is done on special arrangements which can help migrants to adapt, and some kind of arrangement which helps mutual learning to emerge, right? And there are some social arrangements. And recently, participatory research and even co-creative practices has been on the line. And in Japan, talking about this kind of co-creative practices and my target population as a young migrant and student, academia local community also has been located as a, for example, governmental program C or C+, which, however, kind of due to institutionalization, lack continuity and depth from the side of students. So another big part of talking about migrants' adaptation, I want to focus on nature and migrants' integration. And literature says that urban parks and gardening have been contributing to creating new translocal identities, or for instance, like creating new self-sense in the garden. And urban gardens achieve some societal goals, like integration, exactly. And particularly edible plants are really good because they can promote co-eating activities, like in case of incredible edible to Northern. how can we conclude on this literature is that, well, making king can be a way to translate this co-living, co-creating, co-growing, co-eating into some kind of concept. Yes, so making relations, making king from these activities. And making king means making relation beyond our biological or even conventional family. And regarding this, there has been a discussion led by Donna Haraway, and she is suggesting to make king, well, beyond your family, even beyond the human world, so connecting to more than human world. And here the nature, the plants are coming in front. And what does it make to make king? It means to make a connection, well, in our case, with migrants too, and for someone who don't want to make babies, okay, let them do what they want and serve as they want, and for someone who have babies, let them bring these babies to another country and let's grow them together. This can be a way to interpret it in migration context. So, concluding, making king with whom? We have migrants, we have local community, and I suggest to put the plants in center of today's discussion, and this kind of cohabited, well, kind of ecosystem, and see what can happen. So we have this focus activities, migrants who are creating some kind of output by closing labor gap in Japanese local community, in neighborhood association, by mainly co-living and co-growing. So how can migrant residents contribute to community development while adapting to life in Japan? The method, reflexive autoethnography on a residence in this neighborhood association building, based on ethnographic data, participatory observation, informal conversation, interviews, and documented with notes, sketch, photos, videos, and other materials. Location, it's a dense urban neighborhood and 7 minutes from JR station in Shiga Prefecture. So we came to the main part, live and grow in neighborhood association building. So I want to separate it to part 1 or part A, live, and part B, grow. So I will use this icon so you can easily understand because both of them green. Live, house, and grow this plant. And let me first introduce the setting to you. So when we have living in neighborhood association building and growing or doing some greening projects, we see that from normal setting where A and B are separated, for like any person who is living in one place and working in another, so these spheres of life can be quite separated, right? And sometimes, of course, it has some crossings, like in the middle case, where we see that life and work are appearing to cross each other. But in the case of living in neighborhood association building, as my partner and I did, it was quite difficult to separate the private communication or official project. It was in the state of kind of mixed unity. That was the situation, so I hope that was understandable. And by this part about living in neighborhood association building, I want to answer to this question. How is it to live in community building? What kind of benefits and disbenefits it has, and how it can help migrants to adapt to new settings. Here is the layout of the first floor, and the entrance on the right side, and the big stairs to the second floor where we live. This is first floor hall, to give you an idea of how it looks. And this is second floor. Also, it has a hall for gatherings and a private space where we live. Well, this is the hall. And in red, I'm showing something what we well, call private space, but as I will later say, it doesn't feel so much. Because it's still a part of a one building, it has a common entrance with everybody else, with every member of community who want to use the hall. And of course, as many of you have experienced living in Japanese apartments, you can hear what's going on, and it can be disturbing to you too. Some setting from the outdoor environment. In red, I mark the places of daily interaction with local people, mostly in front of gardens, where I was caring for plants, for example, and then they were just passing by and stop and we start talking. And in blue, places of interaction during events, obviously inside the building and inside of the garden. And you can see that there are various plantation types. Wildflowers garden 1, wildflowers garden 2, herb garden. So I will not go today into details of how many garden projects and all kind of craft projects we did, because there are many. I will focus just on one herbal project to show you how we did. Because in 6 years of residence, of course, multiple well, kind of landscape and place-making projects appear spontaneously or planned, and I will not go into details of this project. You may ask me later if you want to know. And this is the view from my residence on the herbal garden. And this is a herbal planter, which was also marked on the map. And I will talk about herb planters later too. So, let me speak a little bit about king-making, exchange of substances, materials, and energy, which appear during the residence in the building. Some of the items which were received from local people, I classify them roughly into groups, so these are not everything, but just some kind of mapping to show you what kind of things people were sharing with us. Food, edible plants from their gardens, and garden plants, which you just plant, and personal items like used hat, used kimono, well, some used books which belong to the husband of my neighbor, and so on and so forth. For example, well, this is a neighbor sharing myoga. Another neighbor asked me to pick up sakurambo because he's Asian, he's having trouble to pick it up. So, of course, in exchange for work, we can get some. And here, local women on the street, which are excited about edible plants, I grow there. You see the parsley, and some you see the women she already pick up. We exchange some plants with her. And, for example, also harvesting lemons. So many cases like this. Another case about eating, it's a sketch of activity when our neighbor, he actually go fishing and he caught namazu, because before we used to talk about fishing, like we like outdoors, and he said, okay, I will fish one and bring and let's eat together. And he did. So he brought the namazu and put a fire in front of our home, yes, and we just start cooking. He brought the soy sauce, his special mix, and we just ate it and were talking about it. So, well, it wasn't bad. I was a little bit skeptical, but it wasn't bad. Nice fish. And another episode about sharing space. So, as you see, our private space doesn't include the toilet, actually. We have to use a common toilet. It's not marked in red, right? And once we both, my partner and I, we got norovirus. So, because we have to share the toilet with everyone and we were not cautious enough, after that we bought Norostar and started using spray. And they will beware of norovirus, yes. So this kind of material flow appear during our life. Regarding interpretation of living in the neighborhood, I came up with a little bit funny framework from Japanese machizukuri, which give a characteristic to younger people as yosomono, wakamono, bakamono, and which means outsider, young, and fool. So this kind of people, well, sometimes they use in the positive aspect, sometimes they use it in the negative, as a change maker in defining localities. So of course, if you depend too much on these outsiders, it's not good, but sometimes they can play out well. And in my case, I interpreted, for example, outsider as being Russian, and someone who really, as a foreigner, who can bring outside view. And how it's changed in time is from conventional European culture representative. I kind of changed my identity to someone who used my personal experience and herbal heritage. Regarding young, well, I continue to be young in eyes of age population from the neighborhood, and they still look at me as a weak being, someone who needs support, guidance, so they continue to help me, but of course less than before. And regarding bakamono, I interpret it as a student, well, being someone learning, aspiring specialist. So after graduating from university, I think many people say that, local people, she graduated, she's okay. So from liminal being someone who needs support, I became aspiring specialist who can now help others with his skills, but still having some a little bit different approach. So this is bakamono, it still persists with me too, as a being young. So the third person is also kind of important in the local community context, and here's like ethnographic material supporting this statement. One woman told me, I talked to you, Mariia, because you are a foreigner. You know I will not speak so frankly with others. They would think that I'm boasting and looking for compliments. So I think in many cases, being foreigner and being third person, well, very enhanced third person, helped me to connect with people because they wouldn't mind. Because if you are talking to someone inside local community, you have to really mind the insiders, politics, who connected to whom, who is whose friend. But regarding me, that doesn't apply, so everybody can just frankly talk to me. And, well, regarding dynamics of these categories of wakamono, bakamono, yosomono, as I just explained, it's changed a little bit, and from yosomono outsider, I kind of became more local, but still, from being an alien, I still remain a local alien. I don't become just local, I became local alien. So this is the dynamics probably. And, well, what kind of outcomes? Of course, I increased my language skill, societal skill, professional skill, and knowledge of Japanese culture as a whole. And regarding community, they, well, get some projects for community well-being and revitalization, even small scale, but I think that may affect everyone's well-being somehow, at least I hope so. So let me talk about growing part. Growing in neighborhood association buildings. And here I pose the question, can plants help to communicate? Well, especially in case of migrant, when language is not acquired yet, right? And can plants help you to feel attachment to the new land? Because, well, obviously, when we migrate, we not only change our social settings, but we change our natural settings sometimes. And the nature might be very different from the place of your origin. And this is my auto-portrait, self-portrait in the garden. And I think it's reflecting the meaning of gardening for me, because in the garden I will feel even more at home compared to my home in Japan. And here are the plants which you see are edible plants, wild plants, and herbs. And about these three categories of plants, I don't count the animals because they are out of scope today. Yes, about these three categories of plants I'm going to talk right now. And I reflected on me growing plants in neighborhood association building in these three parts. You see, we have first vegetables, then herbs, and then wild flowers. And this is the time scale, because I started first growing vegetables on a small plot in front of neighborhood associations. Mostly, I think it was related with my feeling of safety and relying to some kind of subsistence. Because in Russia, dacha, there is a culture of dacha, there is a culture of foraging, wild mushrooms, wild berries, and we really depend on this kind of subsistence from the land, and it creates a feeling of safety. And in Japan, I felt vegetables and fruits are quite expensive, to say frankly. And I really wanted to grow some herbs and flowers for myself without necessity to use money. So that was initial first year in Meiji Kaikan, and many local people who pass by the street, they obviously start talking, why you're growing tomato? Why you're growing cucumber? Oh, this is good. And we started exchanging these kind of notions, and I found, people want to communicate about plants. And it helped me to communicate. So the second step from the, after 1 year of residence finished in 2017, with the team of local women who initially gathered to work with my partner regarding children, we decided to do horticultural projects because we belong to graduate school of horticulture, and use herbs. Why herbs? So firstly, I also have a heritage of using herbs in my daily life in Russia, so it was comfortable to me. But at the same time, these women, they were imposing this kind of culture on me. So you are European, so you know European herbs, and you know European traditions related with the herbs. And they expected this kind of knowledge from me too. And I will show you a few slides later about herbal project. We spread many herbal planters in community and grow herbs together with mostly young women. Well, women in their 40s who, for example, have children and stay home or work, this kind of people. And for this, we expand communication with many people in the community. At the first stage are wildflowers, which we grow in multiple gardens and in the park in the community. And these wildflowers, they help me to reinvent my identity based on my personal experiences of childhood. Because the same plants I was seeing in childhood with my parents when we go out, I would see resembling or similar plants in Japanese wild plants. And where these wild plants came from, they were donated by a landscape company who is exactly developing projects with native vegetation. So in normal urban landscape, you wouldn't see wild plants anymore, unfortunately. So the degradation of ecosystem, but this kind of innovative product is returning biodiversity to where it belongs. So let me show you some slides regarding these 3 stages of vegetables, herbs, and flowers. So this is how the garden looked like, obviously not professional, but people stop by and they chat. Then herbs, herbal heritage, and imposed European culture or Russian culture. So when we speak about this, Russian people drink herbal tea and tea ceremony. These kind of associations were coming to mind, and even local women, they made it the name chaya. Chaya, so because we were doing herbal tea. And one more interesting custom, like eggplant or egg hunt on Easter. So on Easter, we obviously have Easter in Russia too, but we don't do egg hunts. So I think this kind of understanding was spread maybe by Benicia Ohara from Kyoto, and she's doing this kind of activities for children, and local people were thinking, okay, if you're a Christian, you might know about egg hunt, and we did this kind of egg hunting planters. These kind of planters in front of houses, and this is how we made them on the map in the community. And this is how we are harvesting and making meetings, using herbs for tea, for cosmetics, for handmade, for example, tincture. And third, wildflowers. So talking about wildflowers and why it was so very important. So even my first education is biology. I think most of my knowledge about wild nature comes from direct experience and situated learning with my parents as a child. And one of the deepest memory I have with Valeriana officinalis is a plant which you have to dig the root, and the root has a very strong tranquility feature. So if you drink it, you will get sleepy, and it's usually used by someone who worry and someone who want to get sleep, nice sleep. Huh? And cats reacting to this plant very crazy. Our cat, I remember, when we took the root and put it for storage, our cat stole it and started making crazy meow. Well, that was very deep memory for me, associated with this plant. Well, we collected many herbs with my mother, but this was the most, well, vivid memory. And when I come to Japan and see these wildflowers, like Patrinia, I couldn't help but notice that the smell is very same as valerian. The smell is very same, and I started checking online, and it looks that these plants belong to same subfamily, so they are actually related by common ancestors from the times maybe when Japan and the continent they were still together. So I felt some kind of relation to from the land. It's like we from these common ancestors of these plants and relatedness of the flora, I can relate to the land in my childhood and in Japan where I am right now growing these plants. And these are some of the wildflowers, but I will focus only this Patrinia, and for instance, Baremoko was also the same as in my childhood in Russia. It's absolutely the same plant. And this is Ominaishi. So here, yes, I'm sharing my reflection on the smell and that it was the same. But what was the most interesting here is that aged Japanese in the neighborhood, especially women, they were excited about wildflowers the same way as I am, because their generation moved from Japanese inaka to Tokyo, exactly same childhood memories maybe we have with them. It's kind of strange, but we have the same childhood memories of playing in wild herbs, and we have this in common. And lady next door mentioned that she's from Akita and is Baremoko, and she asked me to dig the plant and share with her. And this is the kind of connection we continue to make about the plants. So for main outcomes, what I can resume here is that, well, again, the project for community well-being was performed growing these plants and contributing not only to people but also to biodiversity of Japan, restoring the land. But as for me, I developed special attachment to the land through familiarizing with these plants and remembering my old childhood memories of wild plants in Russia. And so I have to speed up. And moving on, from last year, my partner, my husband, got a teaching job in another city, and we moved for a while, just for a few days a week, to live in a normal Japanese apartment building. And it was very strikingly different experience compared to neighborhood association building. And obviously, it has also benefits and disbenefits. And I have to say, it feels quite liberating not to have any task on management of the neighborhood association building, but at the same time I feel quite lonely and I feel disconnected from my safety network in the neighborhood. And it feels unsafe. Well, yes, disconnected and unsafe. So for conclusion, I have to state the limitations for my study because I recognize myself as a particular type of immigrant who is white of origin from, well, we can say European country, which is arguable, but still European part of Russia. And my visa type is a student, and area of living in Japan, it was quite an urbanized and intelligent community. So in the near future, Japan is going to face even stronger shortages of labor, and more immigrants are will try to come, and migrants have to be adapted to this land. So we are suggesting combining this recent trend into creating multifunctional green infrastructure and also urban agriculture in particular in the city context in Japan. We are suggesting using plants as the universal language because it reflects our embodied experiences of growth, rootedness, being fruitful, and it strongly connects to us, and we can reach to each other talking about plants without language. And this kind of combination of urban agriculture projects using plants as well as work residence in community setting, which creates this kind of liminal space where people can invade and affect strongly on you. I think it can be very helpful to young migrants to adapt and strive in Japan. Thank you.